Okay. Hey everyone in LinkedIn land. It is Thursday, mostly noon Eastern. It's Jen Frazier from Firefly Partners. I'm here with another episode of Untangled. Um, I'm the CEO and founder of Firefly Partners. I've been doing this crazy technology, social good work since kind of feels like the Stone Ages right now, 2007. So we're about to come up on our 20th year. Shocker. But it's very exciting. I'm very excited to have these, little snippets once a week right now to talk to cool and exciting and amazing, smart, intelligent folks in the space. So let's talk about the latest with digital and nonprofits, social good. And now it's all about AI. How about that? So we've been really concentrating on all the good, the bad, the ugly on AI in social good. And this week, I'm excited to be joined by Gozi Egbuonu from the Technology Association of Grantmakers, which I want you to tell us more about what you do. Gozi, thanks so much for being here. Happy to have you.
Awesome. Thank you. Yes, I'm,
Yeah.
I'm thrilled to be here, a new friend from the social impact and digital space. So I'm excited
Yay.
to continue growing this connection.
Yeah.
Yeah, about me, I'm Gozi Egbuonu. I'm the director of programs at the Technology Association of Grantmakers, which we fondly call TAG. I'm also a doctoral student getting my doctorate in behavioral health from the Cummings Graduate Institute for Behavioral Health Studies, and someone that is an AI strategist, someone that's been working in the AI space now for about a year, specifically on projects that are
Hmm.
related to AI and healthcare. But also thinking
Mm.
about it from the social impact space. I worked with the previous executive director at the time of TAG and another colleague at Project Evident to create the AI framework for responsible AI framework for philanthropy. So AI has been something that's been really a big part of my role since I joined TAG and started working on this
Right.
side of the spectrum in terms of philanthropy technology. But yeah, I get to do a lot of fun things like working on that framework, but also getting to host convenings, host webinars, get to work on publications that ultimately reflect the great work that a lot of our TAG members are doing in terms of
Yeah.
innovative, funding practices, innovative collaborations. So there's a lot of really great things happening in support for technology for nonprofits through TAG. But I'm
Yeah.
also really excited about AI in general. So this is an opportunity for me to share a little bit about what I think about it outside of my role at TAG, and everything I'm going to share here is my own views and ultimately are not those of TAG. So I hope that folks understand that.
Cool. Thanks for that clarification. I think that's a good distinction for folks to know. So we have a meaty topic in front of us today, agency in the age of AI. That's very much top of mind right now. There's a lot of conversation about this. Last week, Valerie and I were digging into just responsible AI use, which we touched a little bit on individual agency and what does that mean and what does that look like. And we were just having our little pre-conversation about stuff we can talk about the big topic right now that's floating around is the statement that was released by the Pope this week. And kind of, he touched a lot on sort of this whole thing like what's the moral obligation of sort of these big companies and what's the individual role in using these tools and what artificial intelligence in general and sort of this blurring the line between like human and machine and all these very complicated, complex, big questions. And so agency, individual sort of empowerment, you can tell us what your own maybe definition of just sort of what you feel like agency is like, and then how that is impacted, and what are the major challenges of folks having your own kind of self-determination and things like that as you're working in spaces of AI and how it's impacting different folks. So when you came up with this title, what was sort of top of mind for you? This was obviously something that's been talked about a lot. This latest little kerfuffle is just a little wrinkle, but let's talk about where you were when you came up with this as the topic for the conversation. What motivated you?
Honestly, I've been thinking about it a lot, and I've been thinking about it for a lot over the last few months, truthfully, with a lot of the hype cycle and things that we're hearing about, the worker doomsday. They're all of us are going to
Yes.
be replaced by the machines.
Hmm.
This is all going to happen in a year. That was quoted in 2023. And
I
and
know,
then
like,
today, really, and then today, I think it was either today or yesterday, there was a recent report that just came out, and I have to go look into it. But it was basically saying that all of the folks that were promoting and sharing all of or proclaiming all of these doomsday things are actually walking all of those comments back. those statements
Yeah.
back. In fact, all of these big AI proponent companies, I think it was Microsoft was one of the ones that was quoted, ultimately
Hmm.
said it's a lot of money to pay for this computing power.
Right.
And yeah, so you hear all of these things, and people are making decisions. Jobs have been lost, roles have been eliminated. You name it, things have been happening already, right?
Sure.
And so now we're walking it back. That right there for me does not scream agency. It doesn't say agency for the human worker or the human or individuals whose roles and lives are now being impacted by this tool that they had no choice
Right.
or any real idea that it was coming and was going to come in this huge way.
Yeah.
So right then and there, there's no agency there for us in that. And so it's very fascinating that agency is often a phrase often used by many of these companies. And it struck me that that word comes up a lot. I've seen it in ads, I've seen it in interviews and
Hmm.
speeches. And so I was thinking a lot about it. And I have to credit the person that actually really got me thinking about it, which is a fellow named Baratunde Thurston.
Okay.
He has a podcast, I think it's called Life with Machines. And he was
Oh.
actually at an event that I got to speak at through a couple of foundations. It was called Fund.ai. And at that event, he was one of the first speakers, and he talked about agency and the fact that people are using that word so much and it's losing
True.
its meaning.
It
And it
is.
got me thinking about that with all of the things, the hype cycle, the gutting of the Voting Rights Act. There
Oh.
are so many things that are happening in our society that are showing us we are lacking agency. And AI is a
Hmm.
perfect example of it. This tool
Hmm.
that's coming out, people are telling us it's going to give us all these things back in our lives. Every single data point and researcher has shown that it's just allowed us to dig deeper into grind culture, which is
Hmm.
not healthy. So yeah, agency is not there. And I wonder why people have wanted to co-opt this important thing that we need. Autonomy, agency, those are kind of intertwined and have
Right.
used to sell a product to us that actually is taking our agency from us. So that's kind of where mine was.
Yeah, that's deep. I mean, and it's so funny because and then there's sort of the double meaning of sort of the agents and the agents that are working inside of AI. Like, I'm all like agency. Like, it's sort of this like moment where you're like, where is the agency? Where is your self determination? Where is your freedom of choice when you're right, this is kind of being kind of thrust upon us. And you're like, at this point, feeling like we have no choice. And it's funny because I've got a I've got a son in college and I've got a daughter that's in high school thinking about, she's a rising junior and they both have been like, what are my options when I want to, think about a career and what do I do in my life that isn't going to be eclipsed by
Mm.
the machines? And I'm like, it's so hard for me to help you, and to guide you and help you think about your agency and your life. Like, how are you going to make choices to move yourself forward when you're like, feels like, what does the job landscape look like? What does it look like to be, then in society and as sort of contributing in different ways and sort of like, but what could I do as a profession? Which then obviously impacts everybody. Like this whole idea, like you said, like one of your comments was like the AI machines right now, like the big companies that are running it primarily are clearly not pro worker. They're not, pro individualism. They're like, get in line. You're going to basically be subservient to the machines or whatever. You're like, so I've been trying to struggle with like, what do we do with this? We go, well, there's these big companies. It feels like AI in general is kind of taking away agency. What's a girl to do? What can we do? I don't even know. It feels hard.
It
How
does.
do you handle? How do you deal?
I deal with it by taking a lot of the stuff that's happening in the news cycle as noise.
Yeah.
And I know that's hard because a lot of the things that have been told to us, I mean, they put fear in your heart. You get a little nervous with some of these comments about job loss. And there was even a statement the other day that AI may create a permanent underclass. And I thought, oh my goodness, this is
Oh,
terrifying. Who says things like this? But that's what they're
so
saying.
dystopian. So
Very dismissive.
dystopian.
Oh gosh. And so when you hear these things, I'm like, look, a lot of people have been wrong before. A lot of people have been wrong. There's a lot of technologies that were revolutionary at the time that they came out that are gone. We said goodbye to
Mhm.
Skype last year. Goodbye, Skype, RIP. We have a lot of tools that people thought for sure they were going to be the end, like they were going to change the game. iPods,
They were the
anyone
thing.
seen an iPod
Yeah.
in a long time? So I say this to be to just give people an understanding that there's this kind of world where we do a lot of the beta testing, and a lot of the people who are trying to get you to buy a lot of these tools are required to make you think you need these things. And I
Oh,
think
it's yeah.
it's written in the whole game, and
Yeah.
you have to be the one that says, do I really need this thing? Do I really need it? And oftentimes you'll find that you don't. And we have to take our agency in that regard, in being
Yeah.
able to say that while you're telling me all of these things and you want me to believe it, my agency is in saying I don't have to believe it. And even if everyone and their mother is going in this direction of taking AI, stop hiring humans. I even saw an ad in New York City just last week that literally said, it was by an AI company. Shame on them for this. It said, don't hire a human. Don't hire a human. Use AI. That was the
That's
that was the writing on the billboard.
yeah.
It was on the side of a
That's
building.
horrible. That's horrible.
And I
I
want people to rebuke that type of stuff and say
yes.
that's
Yeah.
disgusting. We shouldn't be thinking like that. I don't want to live, I don't think anybody wants to live in a world that's being run by machines. And if there's any example of what makes me laugh when I think about this AI word, I always tell people to watch the movie Idiocracy.
Oh my God, it's so hilarious to watch right now. I did just watch that like
Yes.
last year and I was like, oh damn.
Right? It was a little too close to home there. But
It was.
you know,
It was.
it's so good.
Oh my
And
God,
it's funny
so
when I
good.
saw it when it came out, like 2010 or 2011, like around the years
Way
it came
back,
out.
yeah.
I'm like, this is wild
It
that this
seemed
is
funny
really
at the
keeping
time,
up.
and now you're like, oh wait.
Like, they're a little too spot on. Even down to the wearing of Crocs. Apparently, I didn't know that movie. They did a partnership with Crocs because Crocs wasn't
That's
even a
so
thing
hilarious.
then, y'all. So that's why they were all wearing
Right.
Crocs in that movie. But Crocs now
That's
is a
so
thing. So you
hilarious.
see, there's a lot of like. So anyway, but yes,
Yeah.
Idiocracy. And I also think of that. What's that movie? It was that movie that was a Disney movie, and it was about trash. I think it was. I can't even remember the name right
Oh,
now.
Wall-E. Wall-E, where the
Wall-E. Yes,
where like the people have to leave the planet. Yeah,
correct.
because it's so trashed.
So it's so
And the
trashed.
robots have taken over. Yeah.
Correct.
Hmm.
Yes. And I think about these and I'm like, nobody wants that. No, I mean, they're even showing reports.
Right.
I've seen medical reports of we're all getting the hunchback of phone and email and check. Like in
Oh,
a
it's
few
like
years, they
the
showed you. Have you seen the
yeah.
prototype of what a woman will or person will look like because of our work from home lifestyles? We're going to be hunched like this.
We are totally
And
hunched. I know. I spend minutes every day being like, shoulders back, shoulders back. I
trying to
know.
get my posture right, right?
But nobody wants it. It's like it's a weird dichotomy though of like it's held up as this like amazing time and all this innovation and it's going to be great, but yet we also are very clearly like but no one wants this sort of like robots control everything and humans are sort of just either a permanent worker class or we're kind of this subservient to the machine and we become lazy. I do all these reports about how your thinking is
Mhm.
so dumbed down when you start to become more dependent on AI
Yes.
to answer your questions for you and all these things and you're like, "Oh my God, like this is a little bit terrifying, but at least we're cognizant of it. It's a little bit though, does it filter back up to the whatever, the oligarchy that is sort of in control of all this stuff? How do we, we can clearly see a lot of this impact. How do
Yes.
we, you know, sort of make sure, or how do we direct in any way what feels like an uncontrollable force that's so powerful with so much money? I'm like, oh, like it feels like yeah, it's a different type of like control and colonialism all over again, like where it's just like again being pressed down through the technology because we've made our lives so technology dependent. Many, most, I would say, not
Yes.
all. And
No.
like so it's just like so it's yeah, it's like we see the evils and we kind of have movies and stories of things like, oh, we can't go there because we know that's the fall of humanity, but yet we're still kind of
Going through it.
constantly glorifying it.
Right.
It's like
Yeah.
this weird give and take right now that I'm like, so you had a good question in our little bullets, like, what should we be talking about? Why aren't we talking about it? Like, worker force, like, who's this impacting? So it's like this, the sheen of, again, it's the same. That's what we were talking about too. It's like it's the same story. It's the
Yeah.
same kind of marginalization. It's the same impacting communities in a negative way to uphold the few
Right.
powerful, mostly white, male,
Hmm.
dominant, infrastructure. And we're like, we can all see this, but then there's such cool stuff that you can do with the tools, and you're like, this is pretty awesome. How do you balance sort of like, ooh, this is cool, this is fun. There's like real possibility
Yeah.
in the in this new chapter of technology, but obviously, like humans always do, we're seemingly running it down a bad path rather than the how could this actually help the world? How do you what do you want to say about what should we be talking about? What are we not talking about that you want us to be talking about more?
You know, talking about the fact that everything you just shared, that these tools are not pro worker, and I need everyone to understand that while they are useful, they beg us, or they force us to interrogate what should be human, what must
Mm.
remain human. And what I find is, and even after learning about how to do AI strategy, how to work organizations through AI strategy to develop and even deploy AI, research AI, I've learned all of these skills. And the one thing that I always find from all of the experts that have taught me is that no matter what, AI is not going to fix the problems that are at the core, at the foundational level of the things that you're doing. And so when you approach AI without thinking about the business case, the impacts, like actually having human to human conversations about what you want to do and accomplish with the AI, the impacts of it, the risks of it, the benefits of it, there
Mm-hmm.
has to be a conversation that goes, if we use AI to do X, it will give us this. And if it doesn't give us this, are we comfortable with using this tool, knowing the risks that come with it? And that's the conversations that need to be had. But
Yeah.
unfortunately, I think people are leaning into the sheepish mentality of, oh, they're telling us we're going to be replaced, so we might as well just run headfirst into this thing and start using it all the time. Absolutely not.
in
The way,
in an effort to maybe not get left behind. I think that's the thing.
yes,
It's like, that's the scare
you don't want
tactic of like your jobs are going to get displaced. The only way you worker are not going to get displaced is if you actually then jump in and learn how
yes,
to use these tools, because then every job is going to be AI, dependent. So
right,
you become obsolete unless you adapt,
right, right.
right? And
And
go, well, hold up. Is that necessarily true? Do we all need to buy into that?
no. And the truth is no.
Right.
And I think
Right.
if that's one thing I can leave this conversation is you do not need to buy in it, and you should not be buying into that.
Right.
There are definitely going to be shifts in the job force, in the workforce.
Sure.
There's no
It's
question about
happening.
it.
Yeah.
Automation, it happened with the
It happened with assembly lines and all that
assembly
kind of
line.
stuff.
Yes, thank you.
Right.
It happened with the
Yeah.
assembly line. It happened with the Industrial Revolution. These things happen. There are always these shifts in the workforce, and it does have, unfortunately, damaging effects. And that's where being in social impact and being in philanthropy, that we have the greatest opportunity. These
Hmm.
large funding collaboratives for things like Humanity AI that are with some of the largest foundations in the country, in the world. And while I respect every single one of the great people that are working, because it is noble, it's with intentionality and the hope
It
that we can
is.
try to get ahead of this crisis before it actually does become one. But I want people to understand that we we can see the reality of the future that's coming up, and we
Yeah.
have the agency now to start thinking about how do we make sure that this doesn't happen to us. And that's where agency really does truly get defined, because
Yeah.
what we find is when you feel like there's a lack of agency, it's because you do not have the ability to act on the external world things that are acting on you.
Yeah.
Agencies when you can take this thing that is happening and still be able to wield some level of power and
Yes.
how it's being utilized, or whatever that case is, whatever it's
Hmm.
doing in the world, its function. And that's us right now, is that we have
Yeah.
an opportunity to say, if you are going to displace all of these workers, what are you going to do to make up for it? What's the
Exactly.
mitigation process? If you are going to build these data centers that are taking all of our water, I watched a video of AOC,
Mm.
Alexandria
Yeah.
Ocasio-Cortez, showing
Yes.
a cup of water. I think it was in Alabama or Mississippi, somewhere in the South. And I can
Hmm.
attest to this. I've been through parts of Mississippi where the water was brown.
Oh,
And I
it's
was told, do not swallow it. You can still shower in it, but
right, but
just make
like,
sure you don't put it on your clothes. Can you imagine the
like,
insanity of seeing something like that? And this
and
was
then
in the
you're like,
early 2000s. Yeah.
Yeah, you're like,
And
this
then
is actually here too, where you're like, this is the United States, not like, and no one should have this problem in the whole in the whole planet at this point. But clearly, being like, wow, this is happening in the United States. Great.
exactly. And so when you see that these part, and of course, I mean, I'm telling you, I saw this in 2005 when I saw this water issue in
Mhm.
Alabama, and then now we're bringing data centers. So whatever clean water they had is probably now even less likely to be clean because now
Exactly.
they're bringing these data centers that are doing all of these things and
Taking all the water.
upending,
Yeah.
yes, taking all of the clean water.
Like,
We as a society have to use our tools. Our tools is the civic process. And unfortunately
yes.
for us, our many of Americans, and myself included, I was an unattentive, I was I didn't, I was an inattentive, you know, citizen. Yeah, inattentive
Yes.
citizen. I didn't care.
Many
And
are.
many are, and I get it. However, again, if you want to have your agency, you can't just let these things happen to you. And we as a society have to have the opportunity with our local elections, our local
Yes.
leaders, our local governments to now fight back. And
Right.
the true way to do it is through policy
Yes.
and systems level work.
Yes.
Policy, we've seen it within the climate region and I mean the climate work. I did a lot of work with organizations like, the Climate Action Fund and
Yes.
Climate Action Networks, and they're
Climate
all
action.
over the
Yep.
country.
Yep.
And one of the greatest things that I remember that we had was this thing called the Relief Act that we were trying to push. And what was the point of the Relief Act? It was essentially we had accepted, hey, polluters are going to pollute. That's just the reality of the world that we're in. Polluters are going to pollute. However, we can make it a lot less incentivized for you to pollute. How? By
Exactly.
charging you a tax for the pollution that you create. And that tax then goes back into our communities. We can use
Yep.
that money to try to mitigate the pollution
The
that you're
effects of
creating
the
and making
pollution that
stop.
you're pushing into a, yeah.
Yeah, and it's that
Yeah.
weird cycle. I know it's kind of strange that we're working against the pollution the person is doing, and then they're paying us to try to beat it. But that's how it works. But we can do it in a way that, again, it does help us put some money and investment back in our communities. And if we don't want these things to come into our communities, that's also what the local government and organizing allows us to
Absolutely.
do. Is to say,
Absolutely.
no, we don't want a data center here. Go away. And we should sue them for that.
Exactly. And that is happening. I'm actually impressed at how many communities. That's the thing is you have to get informed. This is
Yep.
actually forcing, I think, an interesting space where people need to really get involved in their local politics more than they have probably for the last few decades because all this
Yes.
shit is coming into your backyard and it's like up to you as a community to be informed what's happening, what data centers are coming in, fight them locally. That is a part of your agency. Same thing, organize policy work. I think is a big piece of the agency. I love that in terms of like all the deregulation that's been happening under the current administration. We need to then go back and say there's a reason why we went through the 60s, 70s, 80s and got through EPA and like actually went, you know what, this is really harmful for our
These are
communities.
changes.
And then it just
Yeah.
like went, oh, JK, they're all my buddies and they're all making tons of money. We can just slash all that, either taxing or regulations. That we don't need all that. So now we have to be like, okay, we got to pull it back
Yeah.
again and say, no, no, really, we actually do care about our communities. I think that's a great takeaway in terms of what does agency in the age of AI look like? It's the impact that's coming into local communities from the technology that it's requiring all of this water usage and data centers and just the infrastructure that it takes to run this big computing. You do have an impact. Every person can make a difference in some of those outcomes where it feels hard to fight the big five. It
Yeah.
does really come back to local always. It's like a funny thing. Thank you for bringing that into the conversation.
Yeah. Yeah.
What are other way besides, so the kind of the tidbits of what we did talk about last week was sort of the individual usage and then organizational usage also is a form of agency where you can say I'm looking at my own, what does responsible AI use look like for me and my organization. That's a big huge part of what your agency looks like in this AI space. There's a ton of different ways to use these tools, not just which tools you use. It's then like, how are you using them? So I think, like we saw, everyone's like, okay, everybody dive in, use it
Right.
like crazy. And then we're like, okay, wait, maybe I don't need to use AI that's churning off into the data centers at like a ridiculous amount of power for
Right.
stupid Q&A or different things and all this sort of idea about Valerie had a bunch of options there about pre-work and different things that you do before you engage the AI tool.
Mhm.
Back to use your own brain, use the brains of your team. You still can do a lot. Like, don't forget that you actually are smart, engaged people, and you should
Yes.
be still challenging and using your brain before you just jump in. So there's lots of that. I don't know if when you're working with folks in the spaces, I don't know if you have a methodology that you could share or things that we can link to in the podcast about how when you're talking about how folks should use AI, I'm assuming, you've got some of those types of things built into it. I don't know if you want to touch on that at all about sort of the agency that happens in those spaces, not so there's policy, fighting back, maybe different tools, but how do you think about individual usage of the platform?
Yeah, I think that's that conversation with, again, having your own internal conversation with yourself about what you feel is a reasonable reason to use AI. Because I
Right.
think to myself, like, it's hard for us to envision what is happening because this is this thing that's this black box. We put a question in and an answer spits out. That seems easy enough. They're
Okay.
not going to, that didn't seem like it cost a lot of effort. It does. It does.
It
There's a lot of
does.
clean water that's never coming back that was used for you to ask that one question.
Right.
However, because we don't have that, we're still really trying to figure out what the true
The transparency
energy
part. Yeah.
impact, and yeah, we're really still trying to figure
Mhm.
that individual aspect. It's hard right now.
Yeah.
However, you as an individual should really think about what is the importance of me using this tool versus my using my own brain. And in addition to that, like, what I've been starting to think about and why I say children should not use AI, nor should high school students, and even
Right.
to an extent college students, at least with some very significant
Right.
barriers and
Guardrail. Right.
guardrails. But when I say children as like high school students, middle schoolers, elementary school students, they shouldn't. Why? Because the whole point of the human in the loop concept is that when you go to AI for help and answers, it's because you have an expertise or a knowledge to be able to judge if the answer is good.
Right. But the kids don't.
The kids don't. No kid, a kid does not know the mechanics of good writing to be able to go and give ChatGPT this a paper and tell me to write it well. How do you know
Right.
what if it's well? You don't know if you're learning the mechanics right now. So
Right.
we have to, if we're using the AI, don't do the little Jack and Jane of all trades mentality that now you're going
Hmm.
to be you're vibe coding your way into an AI developer job. No,
No.
use these tools in ways that you can effectively judge them for their
Right.
output or how good they're working. That's first. In addition, no, sorry. First is, do you really need to use a tool? Make
There
that
you go.
question. Do I really need it? No. Then go do it the way. So using it to send emails to your buddies and your friends, that's like the weirdest thing I've ever heard. You
I'm.
can't send a
And
simple email to your buddies and your friends. That we need to rethink some
we need to
things in our
rethink.
lives.
Yeah.
Yeah, we got to rethink some things. But okay, now you've decided AI is going to be useful. Use it in ways that allow you to grow your skills. Some of the things
Right.
that I will often do is ask AI, I'm thinking of doing it this way. What do you think? And AI will
Hmm.
say, frankly, I think it would be a better use if you did this. However,
Hmm.
here are some caveats. And then I give myself a little bit of time to think, oh, that's hogwash, or it's good, it's great. That's actually good advice.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's a really good way for you to maintain that co-intelligence process. And co-intelligence is how I like to describe it,
I
where
like it.
you're not giving the AI all of the intelligence and saying AI is smarter than me. Don't go
No.
into it like that. Go
Mm-mm.
into it as that I have the ability to tell if this AI is doing things as smart as I think it should be.
Yeah.
If we continue to be in this mindset of AI is going to be smarter than me, how do you know if it's going to be smarter than you? If it's smarter than you, wouldn't know if it was smarter than you. You know
Right.
what I mean? Like, it's that little weird,
All right.
like,
It's a
mental, like,
loop.
it's
Yeah.
a loop. Oh, it's smarter than me. How do you know? How can you actually check the answer if it's smarter than you?
Right. And
Very
it's only as smart as obviously then how it's been trained as the big
right.
thing
That
too. And
too.
so then you're like, how has it been trained? Obviously, we know lots of flaws, lots of
Yes.
hallucinations, like all those things should at least give people enough to pause. I'm terrified of something that you're touching on, which is the like disappearance of critical thinking, of
Oh,
like that we will
very.
not continue to teach that. And I mean, you can see that clearly in our live form of idiocracy that's happening around us right now, where people have definitely, I mean, it's the dumbing down of society anyway. I think AI could really be problematic and exacerbating that and
Yes.
expediting that. So then suddenly we're like, oh God. Like yeah, you give up all of your agency, you give up all of your ability to sort of make your own critical thinking and choices in it, and just be like, well, I ask, and because I trust, this was another episode we had about the trust that you're putting in these companies to program and train these models to give you the right answer, which are like, you have to know, you still have to train yourself in critical knowledge and that critical thinking power, which is a huge piece of agency. Back to the
Yeah.
agency piece, like without it. So you're right. I think it's tricky and difficult to navigate. Advocating, no usage is hard to enforce, but as
Right.
in the, K-12 environment should be extremely limited while you continue to train and teach your own little brains to develop critical thinking. Without that, and if you become too AI dependent, man, I that's going to be like that's a slippery slope, and I'm fearful of, where that leads to that next generation growing
Same.
up with just like, well, I put it in and I got the answer, and I didn't actually, this, no wheels turned here. Then you're like,
Right.
trouble, trouble. So yeah, I love a lot of the things you've been talking about. I actually was looking at some of the other podcasts and things you're on as well, in touching on different topics. But I think these are important topics, I think, for all of us to keep front of mind. I don't know if you have key takeaways for people as we wrap up today, or I'd love key takeaways, and then I'd love to talk about any resources you want to point people to, which we can include later in blogs, or just how they can get in touch with you. So key
Yeah,
takeaways.
absolutely. I guess my main takeaway is that I think when we're talking about this agency concept, I think people have to also remember that these people that are making millions of dollars are doing it off of information we readily had available on the internet. And that was something we didn't get too into in this conversation, but that intellectual
Yeah.
property theft I mean, you have to call it that. It's IP
You
theft.
do.
A lot of it was pirated and people are making millions of dollars. If you tell us that you trained it on all of our content on the internet, where is our compensation for what you trained it on? I even love, there's a guy that everyone should follow, Jaron Lanier. This is the guy that basically was the godfather of virtual reality, right?
Okay.
Reality technology. Very, very interesting man. Has a lot of ideas about technology that would be shocking considering he's the godfather of virtual reality. But
Yeah.
one of the funny things that he said is that think about those Google when you're doing those little checks. That's AI. You're training AI when you're doing those, like, are you a human? And you're checking all the boxes that have a motorcycle in it. You're training
Right.
AI. Have you been compensated for that? No. So these are these ways that we have to get smarter about ensuring that we protect our our content, our information, but that we don't let people just get wildly rich off of us and we get nothing in return. So there has to be more conversation about how do we make sure that we all get a slice of this pie, because technically AI didn't wouldn't exist without the internet, and
It's
the
like a
internet,
star pie.
yes, it wouldn't. And we got to acknowledge that, and people need to start talking about, hey, how we get some of that money? You know what I'm saying? Because it's true.
Yeah.
That's something we need to be
Yeah.
thinking about.
Yeah.
And the other part of that is we need to be thinking about how we get our pieces of the pie. But if there's anything, that one thing that you can do for yourself after watching this or anything else is knowing what people are talking about in your local communities, in your
Yeah.
state. Start asking questions about how do we protect the workforce, the kids? How do we make sure that these tools don't continue to create or exacerbate harms? I went to an event at
Mhm.
Cornell Tech. Shout out to All Tech is Human. They had an event that was about deep fakes and nudes and notification apps. And it was such an illuminating conversation because, again, here we have these things that are readily available online that have probably been trained
Mhm.
on our materials and information, because that's how they do it. They take thousands
Right.
of images all over the internet, scrape them, and make these images so they can create these notification apps. We have got to start working on the policy and the legal answers to this. I've said it
Yep.
a lot of times. Our lawyers and legal counsel, those folks, those are people who really need, civil society folks and lawyers and legal folks, the Thurgood Marshalls of the world. We need them because those are the people that are going to be able to fight these fights and do it with legal precedent and all of the information that would be able to help us win the fight. So all my
I
legal
know.
folks, all of you that are out there, please start talking, start helping
Right.
people, start thinking of the ways that we can start to truly start to get our agency in this situation, because right now it's dwindling. And with each hype cycle and conversation, and while I appreciate everything that the Pope shared, we can't also deny that there are things that are happening, even in these conversations about agency, that are still not quite getting to the heart of how do we truly get agency and protect it for humanity. And
Humanity. Sure.
yeah, and I think
Yeah,
that's we have to interrogate. We got to interrogate, but definitely stay close to your community. Stay look at what's going on in your local politics. Frankly, I know
yeah,
folks don't want to. It's horrible, but those are where a lot of the really important things that are going to affect your life related to these
exactly.
technologies. You got to start paying attention.
Love it. I love it. All things go back to local. At the end of the day, this feels big and kind of tenable because it's like this big amorphous thing that's happening to you. It's again kind of coming down on top of you, but you do have agency. You do have opportunities to change it with policy, educating how you use it, which tools you use. There's lots of opportunity, and I think like if we start to feel really powerless in this space, I think it's good to just take a breath and be like, we do have opportunities. We do have different avenues and places where we can still take our agency and our own choices and make an impact. And I think enough of us start asking these questions, push back, keep
Yes.
keep that front and center, then we it's not a passive thing happening to you as much as you're engaging and trying to help shape what happens as this new technology does continue to unfold. It's not going away, but we'll see how it gets shaped and how it impacts society as we continue to swim in the unformed jello, as I like to call it right now. We're in the sort of gelatinous, mode right now, and it hasn't hardened. So there still is time to exercise your agency and make choices. And thank you so much for all of your insights, Gozi. Really great having you here.
Thank
This
you.
is our last episode of Untangled for the spring. Thank you for rounding
Really.
out the season for us. We're gonna take a summer break. Who knows what craziness will happen over the summer? And by the time we come back in the fall after Labor Day, when everyone else has been off, hopefully having a nice, relaxing, re energizing time with friends and family, hopefully have a little bit of downtime. That's what summer's supposed to be for. Take a hot minute, re-engage with your inner peace and like go into nature is how I like to say, like get away from the computer, let the technology take a break,
Yes.
re-engage with your
That's
your
my main thing.
human.
Go touch grass. Get out.
Go hug a tree. Like seriously, like go breathe in the forest. This is like so good for you. Get away from all this stuff for like a hot minute. And we'll come back in the fall. We'll probably be still talking about the craziness, but we'll see what happens by then. And until then, everybody have a great summer. Have a great rest of your Thursday. And Gozi, thank you so much.
No, thank you,
Bye,
Jen. This was
everyone.
awesome. Bye,
Thanks.
friends.
Bye.
Bye.